Afternoon all. I'm with my good friend Alex Aflontis today, and we're going to go over one of his great games recently. He's been on a good run of form, about 5 wins in a row, 2 FIDE Masters he's crushed recently. And this is one who's been getting the better of him often in the past, Bob Eames. A very dangerous attacking player who's got, I think, IM norms, hasn't he, behind him as well?
I think so, yes.
So he's been one of your more dangerous, dynamic opponents, attacking opponents.
Yes, I've been a victim of many defeats. Actually, I've been on the receiving end of some brutal attacks in the past. So it was nice to get a point back this time.
And this was a bit of an ambush. Chingford are not usually that strong, and he's never played for Chingford before, and I wasn't available to play that night.
Yes, yes, that's a good point, Schiff. I had no idea I was going to be playing Bob, and it was an ambush. This is his debut for Chingford in the North Circular League. He used to play for Imperial Knights, sort of closely linked to Hackney, but so it was a bit of a surprise to see him.
And his current FIDE is 2240, but he's been over 2300. His FIDE master, he's been over 2300 at some point. So he played very, very aggressively in this game, almost as. And now I just want to tell my YouTube audience that this wasn't the game that inspired me for a recent H5 that I played. In fact, in the H5 game I played, I think I've agreed with Alex. I had more counterplay than black than in this game, as we're about to see. So C4. And he plays E5, which seems to be the intention to me of playing reverse Grand Prix attack. The Grand Prix attack against the Sicilian defence in reverse is often this kind of plan, with this bishop outside the pawn chain, aiming at a sort of Achilles heel of the castle king. That's often a stereotypical plan, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Keres played it many years ago. It was his favourite system, I think, with bishop F5 actually in that line.
But here he's even more direct. He doesn't even bother moving the bishop to C5 first. After seeing G3, this is like a red flag being waved to a bull, isn't it now? Because he sees this as an undermining opportunity. Now, in my game against Andrew Stone, actually, I was more inspired with the knight here, because with the knight here rather than here, logic dictates to me that H2 is going to be weaker. So if you ever play a move like this, H2 is a more natural target with a more passive knight. But I didn't still factor in my king in the centre being used for a later B4. So this is double-edged anyway. If you can be left with a strategically bankrupt position with such a strategy.
I think the problem with that game, Triff, was the centre wasn't stabilised at that stage. It was still in flux, and it wasn't. It allowed a lot of tactics for White that worked out very well in that game. And your king still in centre gave the extra options to seal in that bishop on A7.
But here you haven't even committed this knight to E2 yet, so the knight coming to potentially F3 is very useful for protecting H2 and H4.
Yes.
So it's surprising his next move H5, but I think this has been played with some amazing success. It's got psychological value, surprise value, aggressive value.
Apparently Bob had played this already against a grandmaster, and I think he went H4 in that game, which gave him the G4 square, and that's the difference I think here. The difference between H4 and H3 depends a lot on whether black can play F5 or not.
Sorry, the grandmaster played H4, giving Bob G4.
Yes, I think he got G4 as a square. This is the trade-off. H3 covers G4 but weakens. It leaves black's pawn on H4 more mobile. So if black eventually plays H4, White would like to play G4, but then you have to worry about F5, which opens up the king side.
Yeah.
But H4 stops any kind of attack. But then you've also got to worry about G5.
Yeah, H4, so there's potential for G5 as an undermining target.
Yeah, but here the king is not on the king side.
Yeah. So this is very interesting. Now, I don't know if you know, in Chesscube, war zones, I want to try and mate quickly. So often this is a tactic employed by me to play the H-pawn attack. And it often works because you simply get a massive attack on H2 in a lot of cases. But in general long games, if there's counter resources to exploit the king in the centre, you've got to factor in that. So sometimes I think this principle of the art of war, you need to put yourself beyond defeat before going on to the attack. And I think that's reflected in chess quite a lot. They call that prophylaxis, don't they? I mean, Nimzowitsch, I think he's reflecting the art of war. But so here he's really going on to the attack without any, Steinitz would say he would need an advantage in the position for the attack to be successful. Nimzowitsch would say, beyond defeat. But he's going for it. And you just play, okay, a move which you've taken account of pros and cons of the position, so you play H3. So that's cool. Okay, and now he carries on with Grand Prix attack setup, knight C6.
Yeah, he used to move it stops d4 to open the position. Black doesn't want to have the centre opening up when he's attacking on the wing.
Yeah, so knight c3, so you're not yet committing your bishop, you're just securing control of d5 with classic English opening territory.
Yeah, the knight always belongs on c3 in this line. It's more of a question where the king's knight goes, whether it goes to e2 or f3.
Now bishop c5 with aggressive intentions, so the bishop coming outside of the pawn chain, not being fianchettoed here. I remember in a lot of Kasparov games I went over as black, he's usually fianchettoing his bishop rather than putting it on this diagonal. There's some sort of controversy associated with this, that sometimes white can play e3 and play for d4 or b4 later, but if the bishop's sometimes tucked there, sometimes it's successful on that diagonal. So it really depends on the position.
I think this is probably too early to define where the bishop goes in this line. I think it asks for e3. It might be worth waiting a move to play bishop c5, seeing where the king's knight goes or the d or e pawns for white. But this actually helps white to define his opening setup and gains a tempo later. I think e3 is probably the best plan here.
Right. Bishop g2. So you didn't go for e3 here?
No, this is normal development. So you're still sort of trying to find out where black's going to put his pieces, whether he puts his knight to e7 or to f6, or whether he wants to continue with h4, which would have been an idea. h4, white would play g4, and then you have to worry about
g4.
F5 is potentially, can be potentially dangerous.
Yeah.
But it looks a little bit loosening. G5 is then weakened permanently. But it probably makes sense for black to play d6 and then put more pressure on the G5.
If d6 immediately here, there might be the resource knight a4, because maybe that's why black wants to play a6, because here black would be losing the dark square bishop unless he wants to give it up for d4 control. You could imagine the bishop being chased back and then munched at leisure.
Yeah, I think this wastes a lot of time. I think allowing the knight to take on c5 gives black very good control of d4.
Yes.
And probably a hold on the dark squares.
So you think this might be playable then? What, bishop b6 or knight f6?
It takes a lot of time for white to capture on c5. He's given up 2 tempi to do that, and it's increased black's control of d4. e3 would then be necessary, but then that weakens d3. So and the bishop's moved already off the diagonal.
Right, so this might be quite pleasant for black with bishop e6, queen d7 later.
I think so. Yes.
That's interesting. So you think, well, a6, he's conscious of the bishop, though it seems. He wants to tuck it like you would in the kind of Grand Prix attack systems. I'm fond of a3 in reverse against Sicilian, putting the bishop there. So he's doing a sort of reverse, giving the bishop that pigeonhole. But maybe it's not needed. So knight f3 puts immediate pressure on e5, as though you're threatening knight e5 maybe, and d4 potentially as well.
Yes.
That probably doesn't work here.
Yes, I suppose bishop takes f2, yeah.
But you would still get centre there, so that's interesting. But he stabilises that e5, he plays d6.
I think white has a very flexible setup here. You can go for a number of different plans here. You can play e3, d4, you can play d3, and then e3 later, or just expand on the queen side. It's a very flexible setup, but black's structure has been sort of defined already. so it's less flexible, which is why I prefer white here.
Yeah, this idea of flexibility, that's very nice. It's you've been reading a lot of books on English recently, haven't you? What was the recommended series again?
Yes, Marin's done a very, very good series on the English. He's written 3 volumes on it,
and that's more comprehensive than earlier books on, like Tony Costin's.
Costin's book is a complete repertoire in one. It can't do justice to every single possible line, but it is an excellent book, and one that I basically got me started playing English. Yeah, I think that one's called Dynamic English.
Yeah.
By the way, if you wanted to check that out, but I think it's been received a lot of very good reviews, and yeah, it has pretty much everything in there. But you will find it lacking in certain lines. It doesn't go into so much detail. There's a lot has moved on since that book has been published in at the end of the 90s.
So D3, okay, so that seems like a sort of polite move, just marking out some extra light squares. You're opening up the bishop, so you're ready to pin that knight, maybe if knight f6. But he's not going to play the routine knight f6. He's delayed deployment of that. He's going to do a cheeky move soon, it seems.
Yes, there's a bit of cat and mouse here. I think knight f6, bishop g5. Now that the bishop is outside the pawn chain, the pin is very dangerous for black.
Sorry, and also there's no h6, of course. So that would be quite embarrassing to put the bishop out there, allowing that pin.
Absolutely. So I don't think black can afford to play knight f6 because of the bishop d5 followed by knight d5 ideas.
Yeah,
and they'd have to make a concession, probably playing bishop e6 and having to take on d5. So there is a move order, there are move order tricks going on here now that the h pawn has already moved to h5 and can't play h6. Of course, the bishop wouldn't be able to retreat to h4 because of g5. But now that the diagonal is more open and there's no control over g5, I don't think black can play knight f6.
So he plays knight ge7. So that f pawn is still ready to go later, maybe, unless he just wants to do something else with it. Actually, as the evidence of the game shows, he does something else with it soon. But you play a3, despite the fact that now he has built that pigeonhole for the bishops. So you didn't think a3 would be a bit too tame, considering he has got retreat. You still pursued this because it's not just about chasing the bishop; it's about other things.
Yeah, it's about gaining space and. Say if black plays f6, then the bishop is more useful on b2, and then with a later e3 d4, the bishop is pointing at that diagonal, the a1 h8 diagonal. The bishop doesn't necessarily have a use on any of the other squares. d2 would be quite passive. b2 is the most active position for the bishop, and very commonly developed there.
And you're not showing your destination for your king yet, then. So that you're not giving up your king position.
Yeah, there's still cat and mouse going on here. If black decides to, I mean that's another advantage of a3 in fact, because if black does decide to go queenside, then b4 b5 is useful.
Yes, that king's not going to find a safe haven, is it, on the queen side necessarily?
Yes, so I think if both sides decide to, or if one side decides to castle king side, then the other one could probably do the same and still use the holes on g5, for example, to use for an attack.
So f6, okay, f6 does mean now he's taken away g5 from you, and g5 might be dangerous in the future. Then maybe knight g6, you can imagine h4, and if g4 he's got f4. That's sort of ambitious, but also it means now he can put his bishop here without harassment, then maybe queen d7 and target h3 if you did castle.
Yes, I think that's the reason why Bob played f6. It is a little bit committal, it weakens a lot of the white squares around the king, which could become a factor later on.
But it's like what you'd play against the Sicilian Dragon, in fact. The systems of f3, bishop e3, queen d2. Do you remember castling queenside, those classic Sicilian Dragon? The same sort of structure, a bit like that as well.
Yeah, I think if white castles kingside, then h3 could potentially be a problem, and then h4 would gain in strength if the king went to the h file, especially after g5.
So here you play e3. So you're still not casting, and you're preparing d4 and other stuff.
I think the this is designed actually against bishop e6.
Yes, d4, d5.
It's a common trap actually. You have to be careful here because the pawns expand with tempo. So even after d4, say pawn takes back, the bishop's attacked, and then d5 is the next move.
Yeah.
So forking the knight and bishop on e6. So it actually prevents black developing in the most natural way.
He tries to sort of use a piece now to bind d4. Well, it's not really a... Well, it is a bind, isn't it? He's putting more pressure on d4 here with that knight f5.
Yeah, d4 is not possible.
h4 maybe is supported. So now you play b4.
Yeah, it continues with the original plan. The knights, black's knights and bishop don't have d4 as a square now, which is another advantage of e3. So black's prevented white's main plan, but there is an alternative in b4, which is a good alternative.
So it goes back to that pigeonhole. And now a very interesting move. That bishop is subject actually to further harassment. It's not totally safe.
That's crap.
Fatima Man has just jumped on us behind. He's going to have to join the treble commentary. We have a first for YouTube. We have treble commentary, unexpected. Fatima, hello, Fatima.
Just walk in here.
Do you want a seat? I guess.
Yeah, sit down. Yeah. Glad to make my own tea.
Oh. So we're just going over Bob's game. This is we're recording here live. So I'm going to have to make up a provisional seat. Okay. So we've got the main mics are here. Thanks for joining us, Fat and Mad.
No worries.
So you didn't mention Bob, did you? Chingford.
It must have slipped my mind. Yeah.
Was a new secret weapon on board one, making his debut for Chingford, and Alex is pussyfooting on the Queen side here, where irritating Bob, playing delicate positional play. So your next move is a further irritation to Bob, not casting again. You play b5.
I'm not sure it's the best move actually. It does commit white to sort of losing squares on the queen side. Bishop b2 was probably fine. I think I hallucinated here because I was worried about knight takes or bishop takes e3. But it doesn't work anyway. But you've always got to be on the lookout for these kind of tactics.
Oh, right, this tactic here.
Yes, and for some reason I thought that I couldn't defend my bishop and queen.
Queen d2 would
at
defend.
the same time, exactly. So, everyone's capable of hallucinating.
Well, he has got knight d4 tactically here.
Oh, that looks dangerous.
So if you take knight c2, and if you take that's a knight.
Yeah.
Well, it's a bit of an irritation, but you can play king f2 and then rook e1 after.
I don't think black's.
Take the knight.
Yeah, just take the knight and then king f2 or something. It's not a problem, is it?
Yeah,
No.
there's not enough.
No.
Take 94 coming.
Yeah. Okay. So bit of hallucination as well then. So b5, but it is good b5, isn't it? So he takes, and then you play knight takes b5. So the first pawn exchange finally at move 12.
And the bishop is attacked again on a7. So, but I think the problem with this is that it actually does weaken control over d5 slightly.
Right. Yes, that knight. So d5 could be a liberating move for black in the future.
Yes.
Not here at the moment because you've got the tactics. You got pressure on c7, so he protects c7 actually with his next move and maintains that bishop.
I'm just wondering whether he had to play bishop b6. I mean, maybe d5 was playable, or even bishop b6 followed by d5.
d5 playable here. Couldn't you just play c takes d here?
Sorry, you're absolutely right.
Sorry,
I mean preparation with bishop e6 first.
Bishop e6. Sorry, yeah, bishop e6.
I think maybe black should just finish development and then go for d5
and give up the bishop.
Yeah.
So it's not such a problem here without that bishop.
Well, yeah, the pawns, the black's pawns are on dark squares. D5 is a liberating move. Although I suppose you've got to watch out for e4 potentially.
That would give you d4. I suppose you've got the dark square bishop. It's quite complicated.
I don't think it's possible just yet. But I'm not sure it's such a disaster though to give up the bishop. He's gained time for development, and the king is can decide where it wants to go.
I wonder here you might have things like Queen A8 though later. Well, I don't know. It's
Actually, there's actually also E4 here as well for black. E4 breaking up the pawns,
oh right, yeah, yeah.
which is white's king could actually be in the centre as well.
Yeah.
So I think this gives black probably more possibilities.
Bishop E6, interesting. So he moves that bishop again with bishop B6. Okay.
Which kind of justifies the knight move to b5, but as you'll see later, the knight doesn't have anything useful to do on b5.
Right. So now you.
Back.
Oh yeah. So now you dare to castle here. You think it's safe enough?
I don't think there's a problem here, because after h4, g4 just hits the knight, gains the tempo. White really wants to play d4 and just open the game. I don't think White's got anything to worry about on the king side, and Black's king is going to be in the centre as well. The queen can go to e2, or I think this is fine. This is White hasn't determined where he wants to put his queen's bishop. The king is probably safest on the king side, but as we'll see, next move, Black really determines that he wants to attack.
He's burning his boats, isn't he? I think this is a theme I'm trying to bring out recently, that idea that dynamic aggressive players sometimes do burn their boats, so strategically they're lost after. If the pressure can be soaked up, they're going to be lost, aren't they?
Like the Vikings.
Like Karpov-Kasparov.
Yeah.
Yeah? You know, Karpov nearly wiped out Kasparov in that first match. You know, isolated queen pawn, yeah? And he changed his whole repertoire to the Grunfeld. Right? I feel that if the pressure can be soaked up, his Black's going to be worse. But can the pressure be soaked up here?
Well, he changed it to the Queen's Gambit decline first, right? Then he went to the Grunfeld. Grunfeld was much later.
But there wasn't a Tarrasch in the first match, though.
It was Tarrasch in the first 10 games. He played the Tarrasch. Then he switched to the Queen's Gambit.
Oh right, yes, Queen. More.
He didn't play the Grunfeld until much.
And that was
later.
really against his style to play more solidly. He tried.
Yeah, basically copied Karpov's opening repertoire.
Yes, well, Karpov did say that he taught Kasparov how to play.
Yeah.
But I think g5 here actually does prevent d4 because of the rather annoying move e4. So there is a positional intent here. Bob has seen that
Yeah, you have to
d4
play G4 if D4,
Yeah.
to undermine D4. So it's sort of central control indirectly.
or even e4. In fact, I don't know, it's but this opens up the king side. White would not want to allow that. The h file would be opened, and h4 would be playable.
Yeah.
So White has to be very careful there. I spent quite a long time on my next move, and it actually works out really well. And I think it's also given by the engines as being one of the best moves. I'm quite happy with this move.
So this next move is. I wonder if you guys on YouTube can guess it. Actually, if I give you 10 seconds, what would you play here with White? So you're playing against a ferocious dynamic attacking player, Bob Eames. What would you play? 10 seconds, starting from now. Okay, the move Knight H2 was played. So this is a bit of prophylaxis.
Yeah.
The alternative is Knight E1, but Knight E1 disconnects the first rank, which is a big factor later on, and the knight is more flexible. It stops G4 and defends the king, and also the queen's diagonal to H5 is opened. So the
yes, tying down the rook a bit.
so
as
tying
well.
down the rook, exactly.
So discouraging G4. You've got bishop scope here.
Yeah.
I really like this move, because I think sometimes if you're being attacked with a pawn storm, it's quite handy to have your pawns aligned facing the black pawn. So if you're being attacked by a G and H pawn, if your G and H pawn are side by side, it's very hard to open the position, right? So any pawn thrust can be met with a blocking move. So this retreat enables that, and it keeps. Now, if you look very closely at the pawn chains here, black's minors all sit in front of his pawns, yeah, whereas white's all sit behind.
Oh yes,
And I think that flexibility is very important.
that's a good point.
That's an excellent point.
I never even noticed that. Yeah, you're right. These were apart from this one. Well, there hasn't got a pawn behind it anyway. Apart from that one, but these two are behind. Yeah. You've got defensive posture, but you're controlling a lot of squares.
White has great flexibility here, and if you're playing black, there's a lot of things that you have to contend with in terms of pawn breaks, whereas black barely has any.
That's very true. Yes, D5 is not possible. E4 doesn't actually achieve anything. So at some point,
E4
black's
is
pieces are going to
important
get.
as well.
In fact, d6. Yeah, these pawns are all locked down. All of these pawns are actually locked down. So it is classic prophylaxis. You see in a lot of GM games, they lock down any liberating pawn moves. Karpov, is a master of that. Just locking down counterplay, and that starts with a liberating pawn move. So bishop e6, as though maybe d5 might be on the card, or just maybe casting queenside or something. But we see. So as I was saying, the knight on b5 has done its job basically. The b file is semi-open, but now White has to worry about d5, and he needs to prevent d5. Although after d5, pawn takes, bishop takes, e4 would be winning
would be annoying. But then there are tactics, because the diagonal is open for the for Black's Queen's bishop. Knight g3 would be on. It would be a bit messy, a bit complicated.
Oh right, let's have a quick look at that. So
I don't believe it, but
so say you made let's give an on move which you wouldn't play. So d5 takes e4. You're saying knight takes g3. I'm not sure there's enough. Yeah.
No, I don't. I don't.
Okay.
It. But I think if the bishop were to, if White's Queen's bishop were to move off the diagonal, say to b2, then there are some tactics on e3.
Yeah.
So accuracy is required, I think, here for White, and it's easier to improve the knight on b5 than to sort of determine where the c1 bishop's best diagonal is.
Yeah, that's definitely adding some solidity at the moment to e3. So you're improving that piece, which isn't doing much at the moment on b5.
Yes.
So you're keeping these guys under lock and key.
And it can also jump into d5, hitting the bishop, and Black wouldn't want an exchange on b6, which would cripple his pawn structure.
Yeah, and get rid of that potentially attacking bishop again.
Yeah.
So knight a5 now. So he's rule breaking. He's keeping his king in the centre. He's attacking before securing his position, and now knight's on the rim as well. So he's quite rule breaking, isn't he? Very dynamic.
Yeah, I think this move I think is again designed against d4 because of the pressure on c4, and also Black wants to play c6 and d5 and expand.
You can't be right, that can it?
I think if White doesn't react well, it could work out well for Black. But I think White needs to be very precise here.
Actually, this is almost this is a pattern though. This manoeuvre to get the bishop here sometimes.
It is, but
it's a bit slow.
Well, there's a lot of dicking around here, isn't there? I think
no profanity, please.
Queen d7 looks natural. Right?
Yes, I probably would have preferred that, because h3 is a
Queen
weakness.
d7 looks natural, because I mean, at least you can then pretend that you're about to connect rooks somewhere, and then I mean,
complete development.
Yeah, I mean,
sorry, Queen d7 here.
Yeah. I think it's got to be a better move, right?
Well, but knight d5 is actually threatening now forking the queen and king, and also crippling that looks nasty.
You can play king. Oh, okay.
Ooh.
Yeah, it would probably force bishop takes knight, wouldn't it?
And then he'd be left with light square weaknesses, wouldn't he? Would you take with the pawn here to have, or not? Actually, I'm not sure about taking the pawn. What would you do here?
Bishop takes is fine.
Bishop takes is fine. Yeah.
Although, yes, okay, knight e7, knight fe7, bishop g2.
Yeah, he's got loads of. Well, it seems intuitively light square weaknesses.
Can you play knight takes g3 here?
That is pawn takes.
And then queen takes h3.
Queen f3 or something.
It's not enough, is it? No, because you're coming down the f file as well. Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Well, there might be knight d4 because it takes them bishop a1, but then
No,
there's
just take the f pawn. Oh no, you can't take the f pawn because it's.
Well, you can play bishop e3, yeah.
Bishop e3.
Okay.
But you've got to be on the lookout for these kind of threats.
Perhaps knight a5 isn't so bad after all.
So knight a5, and then you play rook b1.
So I suppose the idea is to play knight d5, and then Black can't play c6 because the bishop would be on prise. That's the main idea, and it improves the rook on a semi-open file.
Yeah.
So after c6, the bishop is attacked.
Yes.
And this becomes an important factor later on. Actually, the B file is a crucial avenue to into black's position.
In fact, you attack the bishop now with your next move, knight a4, putting your own knight on the rim.
Also, the knight and a5 has lost its squares now.
Yes.
This is one of the drawbacks to the c6 move. While it controls d5, the knight doesn't actually have many squares.
Perhaps he
Many
could have gone-
squares.
Yeah. I still don't think it's a good manoeuvre.
And now you target a5. That's the piece you start targeting with bishop d2 now.
It just basically tries to complete the development. The bishop doesn't really have a future on b2, but black's pawns sort of block it out effectively.
Threatens to win a pawn.
Yeah, you're threatening to win a pawn. I was going to say that. The bishop takes and rook takes is now a threat, surely.
Yes, and that's what prompts Bob's next move, I think, which lands him in trouble later on.
Oh, right. He indirectly defends b7
Yes.
now with rook h7.
Yeah.
So if takes,
So
then
takes, bishop takes. Yeah.
There's got to be a better move than that, right?
Yes, I think you're right. I think maybe queen c8 or even rook b8.
Black's position is getting very static. A lot of his pieces are getting locked down. They don't have a lot of squares or the defending things. I think the rook is now defending potentially two things: the pawn on h5 and the pawn on b7. This is a tactical problem.
Very, very true.
So rook h7, yes. Now you put a pin into the position, so you're victimising this knight, and now you start victimising this pawn.
Well, they're all being. I mean, they're all sitting in front of their pawns, aren't they? So.
I suppose g4 is a threat here.
Yes, a tactical threat g4.
It's quite a provocative move. I think Bob got provoked here.
To have to do something about g4, yes, that seems to be clearly on the cards now. To use this pin.
Yep. And that was the other reason why it's a bad move. He walks into a pin.
And he can't move the rook away from h5 as well. So the rook's kind of got a lot of responsibility. So he breaks the pin d5.
You always know it's a bad move, right? When if you put this into an engine, the engine suggests probably taking it back or moving the same piece again. Right? You always know you've.
Yes. I think it was suggesting rook h8, wasn't it?
Or rook h6, I think.
Or rook h6. Yeah.
So now you didn't mind playing c takes d here.
Well, I think the problem with this move is that c5 is a big hole in the position.
Yes, new
and-
weakness.
And the problem is black's pieces are just on very bad squares. There are lots of pieces being attacked here and pinned.
Yes.
And black's king is still sitting in the centre.
Yeah.
It looks like Black has played 3 separate openings and lumped them together.
And now instead of moving the bishop, actually you do exploit that c5 square. Now you play knight c5.
Yes, I think before playing bishop e4, this had to be calculated. Otherwise, white can end up being on the receiving end of some tactics. So this move, if you look at all black's pieces, they're actually connected, like as if a knight were moving between them. So e6, c7, a8.
Oh yes.
And this is something I sort of picked up on. Because you're giving up potentially giving up your white squared bishop, which is a defender of the king, but then you're also gaining the 2 bishops as well, and this knight on a5 is still really out of play.
Yeah.
And there are also checks on a4 as well. That because the king's still sitting in the centre, there are tactics there as well.
Yeah. So he goes on the retreat, bishop c8. So he must have thought he didn't. What was his emotional? Was he annoyed by his position here? Do you think?
Well, Bob must be a good poker player.
I think he was drunk actually. I think he had one too many pints of wine. It was his first game for the club. He also been down to the bar. And,
Thanks, Fat and Mad. So it wasn't because of my brilliant play that I won this game.
But he did look drunk though.
Bishop c8. A move that undevelops effectively the position and asks for the next move, which maybe the viewer can have a look and see what they would play here.
Okay. All you bunnies on YouTube, yeah, 10 seconds here. Just joking out. 10 seconds here. Sorry, what does white play here? Starting from now. Okay, your first forcing move, you don't move the bishop again, you play bishop takes a5.
Yeah, it removes the defender of b7. And I'm not worried about pawn takes bishop, because I can then take the bishop on c7 with tempo. And then again I can take back on e4, hitting the knight. So basically black's pieces are all on prise after this move. So it's not an easy position for black to play here. And white is only one move away from connecting rooks and having a fully developed position. And the threat of g4 is still there, in fact.
So let's take an example now. So if d takes, you're just a piece up. You just you just take here.
Take there and then take back after queen takes, knight takes e4 even. Or,
Gorgian threat knight.
So
you're not. No, sorry, you're not.
I'm a pawn up here.
You're a pawn up here with that huge threat of knight f6.
Yeah, and queen b3 threats as well. For
Oh,
example.
blimey! And then rook c1, yeah.
And there's no attack for black here at all. As black's attack hasn't gone anywhere.
And the rooks are just disconnected, not speaking to each other. So that's horrendous. He can't do that. So he has to do something about this. He just recaptures now. Bishop takes a5. And now you play a tactic, a very good tactic, it seems, instead of retreating the bishop. So
yes, it's a kind of decoying move, effectively. And again, the h5 pawn is still only defended by the rook.
So can you guys guess it on YouTube? By the way, I call these guys bunnies. It's bunnies is a friendly term used between us for many years, isn't it? Really. So please don't think it's a negative implication there. So anyway, 10 seconds here. So starting from now. Okay, knight takes b7. So you find you've actually netted some material finally.
Well, it's decoying the bishop away from the bishop and rook away from the defence of the knight on f5. So if bishop takes, rook takes, hitting the rook on h7, rook takes back, and bishop takes f5. So I think I've gained the pawn out of that.
So bishop takes here. You could play bishop takes f5.
Rook takes b7 is probably
Stronger, is it?
Well, there's also queen takes h5 check, and the white squares are asking to be invaded.
But you'd be sacking the exchange here, though, wouldn't you?
But I've got a lot for the exchange. Knight comes to g4. There's also threats of queen h8 check.
Yes, it looks vicious.
The black's pieces are all on the queen side here.
Yes. Oh dear. Yeah, away from the king. The king's.
But do I have to do this, Triff? I don't think this was necessary.
So the simpler approach is just. Would you want to do the simpler approach, bishop f5?
Bishop f5. Yeah, that's
game over, isn't it?
That's the simpler approach, isn't it?
The rook can't defend h5 and b7. The overload is complete. Yeah.
Oh right, yeah. In fact, you just win h5 here without the exchange.
So this is clearer. Two pawns up with an attack.
So okay, so he plays now. He must surely be thinking the position is a bit dire now. Queen c7.
Yeah, I think this is just a blunder actually, but it's not an easy position to come up with a good move here. I think Bob just forgot that his d pawn was on.
It's the weakness of the last move. But I've noticed that I was looking at the recent Bunratty games, and people do tend to crack as humans. We crack under pressure to create a weakness of the last move. It's a natural consequence. So he's just blundered the d5 pawn, the weakness of the last move. So bishop takes d5.
And white is now 2 pawns up, with threats of knight d6 check, and the rook on a8 is.
Oh, that's nasty one now, isn't it? Unveiled, yes.
Is not defended.
So knight d6 now is on the cards.
There are too many hanging pieces here, I think.
Everything is on the card.
So bishop b6, and so you can, it seems, play knight d6 if you wanted to here.
Yes. But I think there's a stronger move which the engines have confirmed actually.
So
see if you can spot this move. This is a I like this move.
okay, 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, Queen F3. It seems quite elegant in that you're probing F5 again. You're protecting
Yes,
E7.
it connects the rooks. One of the rooks can go to the C file to challenge the queen.
This one can attack the queen.
So basically, every single one of White's pieces is now joining in the action. Okay, maybe the London H2 is still sitting without something to do, but
well, he gives it something to do now. He wants all your pieces to be attacking pins. It seems now.
yes, I think this is perhaps a little bit desperate now. But
Yes, this opening of the
is
H file doesn't particularly favour him because he hasn't got the artillery to back it up now. So he sacrifices a pawn, and
I
that
think it's really a sacrifice. I think you call it a sacrifice, really.
no,
I think it's something else at this stage.
dreams of mating down on the H file, perhaps.
Something like that.
So what else could he do? It's a very difficult position, 2 pawns down.
He's lost, isn't he? He's completely lost. There's just too many threats, right?
So yeah, if bishop takes b7, queen takes f5.
Rook c1 is just. I mean, Rook c1 is such a big threat, right?
No, but there's also bishop takes b7, and then queens can come off.
Yes, and then rook takes b. Oh,
there's just too much hanging.
Here, what would be the best?
No,
move?
bishop takes,
yeah.
queen takes, rook takes b6.
Rook takes b6 here. Wow,
Well, yeah, sorry.
wow.
Because there's this pin on
the
queen, and the knight actually has a very useful function here, defends the queen.
If we got time after this, I'll show you one of my games with similar themes.
Sure.
So
Overloading.
You guys, sorry, I don't know. So g4. Anyway, so we get this position. So king e7. It's starting at desperate. Rook fc1, bringing all the pieces to fire on the black pieces now, and now queen d7 seems to be disaster, isn't it? It's the piece down. Rook g7, and now you finish with rook e6 check.
yes, it's not the best move actually. I think there's even knight takes f6.
Knight takes f6.
No, or even rook takes f6.
Yeah, it's all over. You're so much material up now.
As long as White doesn't get mated somewhere, which is hard to imagine in this position. But
so rook e6. Okay, so should we try and do? So in this final position, just to make it clear, everything's falling to bits here. Knight takes f6 or rook takes f6. Anything really.
Piece up already.
There's another piece gonna be dropping off. F5 is gonna be dropping off. Basically, there's no h1 attack. So yeah, there's no attack. So let's just make that clear. so basically, let's do a quick overview and summary. So h5 didn't work out here like in my recent game, but I had more counterplay than this game, it seems, because Andrew Stone he played bishop. It was a bit more controversial than your play. You really kept a lot of stuff under lock and key with minimal counterplay from black, and you harassed that bishop, and this knight h2 was a key part of the defensive prophylaxis strategy.
yes, we said later that if it had gone to e1, say,
yes, then he would have dreams coming true. Like
the rooks would have been disconnected. The rook wouldn't have been able to go to c1.
Oh yes.
So there would have been. It would have almost certainly have had to move again.
So that's a major benefit of h3 for the defensive player in these type of positions to have that placed knight h2. So and now you don't mind the knight's done its job on b5, opening up that b file, and you start celebrating that b file pressure now. With pushing his pieces back, and now a forceful combination to win a pawn is initiated here. So you win a pawn, and then he really starts collapsing. He loses another pawn, and then he starts losing another pawn. He's 3 pawns down. He loses a piece, and he's about to lose another piece. So, an instructive game. I hope people on YouTube found that interesting. And comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much, and thanks to my commentators here. Okay, Fat Mad and Alex.
Thanks,
okay,
thanks,
who hasn't got a channel yet, but you will have a YouTube channel maybe soon, one day as well. So that'd be
Yes,
cool.
hoping to.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Okay, thanks very much. Comments or questions on YouTube? Cheers.